Christian missionaries insist that Jewish people should believe that Jesus was the Messiah because they say the Jewish scriptures contain hundreds of prophecies about the coming of the Messiah, and that Jesus fulfilled all of these prophecies. Now, very few people have bothered to really go through this long list of alleged prophecies. Most of them are like cotton candy. Once you bite into them, they evaporate and nothing is there. For example, I don't think anyone really seriously considered that Jesus must have been the Messiah because he was born in Bethlehem or he rode on a donkey. Another one on the list is that they say the Messiah will be betrayed by a close friend. And of course, almost everyone in the world has been betrayed at some point by a close friend. The vast majority, 99% of these alleged prophecies are not really about the Messiah at all. They are morphed into Messianic prophecies by Christians who basically read Jesus back into the Jewish Bible. But Christian missionaries will usually fall back upon and rely upon a small set of what they feel are very powerful passages. And they will usually appeal to passages like Isaiah 53, which they claim speaks about the suffering and death of the Messiah, and Psalm 22, which they claim speaks about the crucifixion of the Messiah, and Zechariah chapter 12, which also they insist speaks about the crucifixion of the Messiah, and Daniel 9, which they insist tells us the exact date the Messiah will be killed. We can actually cross-examine each of these passages and show that they're misinterpreted, but they have a certain external credibility because they sound very much like Jesus. They really seem to be a unique and powerful testimony to his being the Messiah. But there's one problem. When we look at each of these major messianic prophecies, the nuclear bombs in the missionary arsenal, we see something interesting, that these are prophecies that only become relevant, they only kick in after the death of Jesus. And what's important to remember is that Jesus claimed to be the Messiah 3 years prior to his death. Not just claiming to be the Messiah, Jesus insisted that people simply take his claim at face value. He would have very harsh words. He would curse out people who didn't simply accept his claim to being the Messiah. And so at that point in time, he was not able to really say, I must be the Messiah because I rode on a donkey. People would have laughed. And he couldn't say, well, I was born in Bethlehem and a lot of people don't like me, because people would have laughed. So he wouldn't have the ability, however, to trot out the really hard-hitting passages that missionaries like to rely upon, like Daniel 9 and Zechariah 12 and Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53, because those didn't apply until after he died. So we're left with the problem, why should any Jew at the time that Jesus claimed to be the Messiah, why should any Jew have taken that claim seriously? Why should anyone have simply just assumed he was the Messiah? And because of this, Christians are forced to fall back on the idea that, well, he must have been the Messiah because of all the miracles that he performed. And when we go through the Christian scriptures and the Gospels, this is a major element, a major feature of all the Gospels, is to show and highlight all of the supposed miracles that Jesus did. Now, we're not going to, at this point, discuss whether or not these stories are credible and there's any historical veracity to them, but let's take them at their face value and say that Jesus did do miracles. The problem is, how many times did the Hebrew Scriptures tell us that one of the ways that we'll be able to identify the Messiah is through the miracles that he will do? And the truth is, the Hebrew Bible never tells us, it doesn't come up once, that performance of miracles will be a way of identifying the Messiah. Now, why is that? Well, the answer is very simple. Because in the Hebrew Scriptures we see that miracles are never able to give someone automatic credibility. The 13th chapter of Deuteronomy tells us that false prophets will be able to perform incredible supernatural miracles. And even the Christian Scriptures in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, says that false messiahs will be able to perform incredible supernatural miracles. So once we know that false prophets and false messiahs can perform miracles, it's very obvious that the performance of miracles could never prove that someone is the Messiah. And therefore, There is absolutely no reason for someone living 2,000 years ago at the time of Jesus to simply have thrown his hat into the ring and said, sure, it must be true that he's the Messiah because he's claiming to be the Messiah.